If you've ever created an animation and just thought that it lacked a little pop, it's probably because you haven't been editing the keyframes in the graph editor. Now in this exercise we'll animate all 4 of these words using the graph editor, but we'll work efficiently by only animating one word and then copy and pasting those keyframes to the subsequent layers. So to get started, I want to animate the word success. So let's select the layer 3, and just so we can see that layer only, let's click the solo button. Now that we've isolated success, let's press P on our keyboard and then hold down Shift and S to open up the scale and position parameters. Those are the 2 parameters that we're going to animate. Now since this is where I want the word to end up, I'm going to go ahead and animate backwards by positioning my current time indicator on frame 12 and then clicking the stopwatch's next position and scale. Now that we have our first keyframe set, press home on your keyboard to move back to frame 0. Now change the scale to 0 and you can still see where the word is because of this control handle in the middle of the comp window. Now I just want this to slide a little bit to the right, so I'm going to click and drag on the X parameter for position. Now that we have our keyframe set, let's set our work area somewhere down the timeline. I'm going to click near 3 seconds and I'll press N on the keyboard. Now we can load a RAM preview. As you can see, I've got a rather vanilla animation, so I'm going to press the spacebar to stop playback. Now we can go into the graph editor to make some adjustments. So click on the graph editor button, which is just to the right of the automatic keyframe button. You could also press Shift F3 on your keyboard. If your graph doesn't look like this, don't panic. We have multiple buttons across the bottom of the graph editor, and the second one in, if you click it, has some options for the type of graph that you're going to look at. I want you to make sure yours is set to Auto Select Graph Type. Since my keyframes are only in the first 12 frames, I want to change the magnification on my timeline, and rather than clicking on the slider, we can quickly change that by clicking this button here with the 2 lines. This will fit all the graphs into this area, and just so I have more space vertically, I'm going to click at the top of my timeline and just drag up. This should automatically resize as long as you have the auto zoom button selected. It looks like a magnifying glass. Now when you're editing in the graph editor, you want to pay attention to what parameters you've selected on the left side of your timeline. I have position selected, so the speed graph is automatically loaded. That's because this is a spatial set of keyframes. Spatial will automatically default autograph to open the speed settings first. Now if I click on the scale parameters, this is going to open a value graph first. So click on Set Scale and make sure that you have this red line in your scene. Now this second dot up here on the right actually signifies a keyframe, so I want to go ahead and click and draw a lasso around that keyframe. You can double check that just by turning off and on the graph editor. Now with the second keyframe selected, let's add an ease. We can do that with these buttons down here on the right side of the graph editor. So let's hit the second button in. We just added an ease in. Now I want the word to pop larger than its final keyframe value. And if we look at the graph, 100% is right here, and you can see it never passes that line. To make it pass that line, go ahead and click and drag on that handle and drag up. It doesn't need to go way past the line, it can just go past a fair amount. And if you want to preview what it is looking like, go ahead and click up in the number area of your timeline to move your current time indicator there. That way, as we make changes, you can see how the word changes. Now I want to accentuate this move, so let's do the same thing with the first keyframe. Draw a lasso, but this time we'll add an eased out. That's close to perfect, but let's go ahead and drag the handle a little bit further out to the right. Now let's preview this again. Okay, that's definitely giving it a little bit more pop, but I'm going to press the spacebar and stop playback. Let's accentuate it even more by adjusting the position keyframes. So select the word position and we'll start by adjusting its speed value. I want it to animate slowly and then get quicker as it gets over to the right. So draw a lasso around the first keyframe of the speed value graph for position, and you'll see we have a control handle here. Go ahead and click on the control handle and drag down. I'm going to drag it all the way down to 0, and then I'm going to drag the handle to the right. And when I let go, now you can see I have this kind of cool mountain looking graph. Now anytime you're editing speed, you want to try and get rid of any kinks. So what I'm going to do is click and drag on the right handle a little bit here, so this is a little bit more straight. This is going to give it a really interesting pop. Let's load up a RAM preview. I think that already looks pretty dynamic, but I'm going to go ahead and press the spacebar one more time because we edited this speed. I also want to go ahead and edit the value. I want it to slide a little bit past its second value. So to change graphs, let's click that second button again and then go to Edit Value Graph. Notice we don't have any control handles in the value graph. That's because spatial parameters like position that have X and Y actually record both in one keyframe. If we want to manipulate only the move on the X, we need to break these values apart, and to do that there's a button here right at the bottom, that XYZ button, that'll break the values apart. And if we look back to the left of our timeline, you can see I have one for X and one for Y. Now I know I'm not animating anything for the Y position, so let's go ahead and deactivate the Y. Now notice when I did that, it's deactivated the X. So let me just Command Z or Control Z. I'm going to kick off those keyframes, and now I can click the stopwatch for Y and it'll no longer be there. Now just so I'm looking at X in scale, I'm going to select that layer and press U. It'll just show me only the parameters that have keyframes assigned. Now let's click on X position, and as you can see we have a value graph and it's got some strange codes here. So let's go ahead and draw a lasso around the first keyframe. I'm going to smooth this out a little bit. In the second keyframe I want this to actually slide past its current value, so I'm going to drag it up. Okay, now let's preview your animation. That definitely has a little bit more pop and interest than what we had originally. So now all we have to do is apply these to the rest of the words. I'm going to press the space bar to stop playback. Now we can turn off the graph editor by clicking the button. Now go ahead and click on X position and hold down Shift and click on Scale. That'll select all the keyframes, so now we can just copy and paste. Now before we paste the keyframes, you want to pay attention to where the current time indicator is. So press Home on your keyboard to return the current time indicator back to 0. And I'm going to extend my magnification of my timeline just by clicking this little yellow button and dragging all the way to the right. Now we can paste all the keyframes. You can paste keyframes to multiple layers just by selecting all those layers. So I'm going to select layer 1 and hold down the Command key on the Mac, Control on the PC, and then click on any subsequent layers you want to add keyframes to. So 1, 2, and 4. Now go ahead and place your keyframes Command V or Control V on the PC. Now let's turn off Solo for layer 3. Then we can preview our animation. I'm going to stop playback here. Now to add a little bit more interest, I'm going to slide our keyframes so each word animates in at a different pace. Press the U key on your keyboard and you will automatically open up all of the layers keyframes. So we can just click and drag a lasso around any of the other keyframes to change their specific timing. So as I load up the RAM preview here, you can see that we've created a rather dynamic and interesting animation, all using the graph editor.